You began by making a reputation as a cynical iconoclast. Would you say something about the process that took you to your interest in unorthodox religion?
I was always interested in the descriptions and philosophies of the mystical life. I remember as an undergraduate reading Jacob Boehme and having various Catholic friends who knew a certain amount about the mystical tradition in Catholicism, and I read a fair amount at that time. Then I, with sort of mixture of admiration and hostility.
With derision?
Not with derision, but with a good deal of skepticism and with a great deal of fascinated interest. And then I came to read more and meet numbers of people who knew about Oriental material, read a good deal of that, and came in touch with men who'd had first-hand experience. And this interests me now very much. I mean, again, this is making the best of both worlds. This utopian fantasy I've just finished is about a society in which, owing to historical accidents, there has been a mingling of Western with Oriental influences, so that both sides are developed, and an attempt is made to get the best out of both sides. Many serious philosophers like Northrop, for example, The Meeting of East and West, is a frightfully dull book, but it's a genuine, serious attempt to make some kind of a synthesis.
But aren't Eastern ideas and presumptions utterly different from ours?
After all, in the past there have been plenty of syntheses between East and West. I mean, Christianity was one, after all. Neoplatonism certainly got a good deal from the further East, which became a very important stream in Christianity. I don't think they are utterly different. I mean, did you read a book which I think is a very good book by this Englishman who's lived for many years in Japan and taught there, Blythe, called Zen in English Literature? A very good book. And pointing out, I mean, how much there is in English literature, which is profoundly Zen-like. I mean, Wordsworth is full of Zen, and Whitman is full of Zen. And many people have this sort of attitude towards nature. I mean, the Japanese artistic representation of it, both in landscape and in the haiku, is perhaps more refined than anything we did, and more sort of elegant. But nevertheless, it's of the same order, it seems to me. I mean, in a curious way, I would say that intellectually speaking, the shortest way to India from the West is via Japan and the Far East. Because, I mean, we share with them this kind of nature mysticism which the Indians never developed. And, I mean, the Indians, after all, never developed a landscape art, where the Chinese developed it 1,000 years before we did. And it's possibly the most wonderful religious painting in the world, the great Song landscapes. So that I don't think there is anything profoundly alien. I mean, this does represent a deliberate attempt to cultivate perception and imagination, to cultivate these non-verbal sides of the total human organism to their highest pitch of refinement and awareness.
Surely Zen is just a kind of inward turning which makes for cushioning an otherwise intolerable existence.
But Zen isn't really all inward turning. I mean, it's outward turning in some ways. I mean, it's both inward and outward. It's after all, nobody's been more acutely aware of landscapes, of flowers, of birds than the Chinese artists. And this does represent a whole, Japanese artists too, represent a whole social attitude towards the external world, of seeing infinity in a grain of sand. I mean, the Blake poem exactly sums up what they were after and what they so consummately succeeded in doing. I mean, this is simultaneously outward and inward, which seems to me the most desirable state you can possibly have. The Japanese landscape art was 200 years later than the Sung landscape art, which was the early expression of Zen in the Far East and the expression of Buddhism. They have their religion in Shintoism. They have various Buddhist sects which are full of ritual and symbols and so on. But they do have, and there is a certain element of this in Christianity too, this idea of a non-dogmatic, non-symbolic, I wouldn't call it religion, I just call it an approach to the universe. I mean, they're not worshipping anybody particularly, but they're just, this is the way they want to respond to the universe with the maximum of sensibility, with the greatest perception of the mystery within the explained and understood world. I mean, again, this is making the best of both worlds, to understand as much as you can and to label and to classify, but at the same time, behind the labels, to perceive the fathomless mystery of existence, which is the whole essence of Zen, it seems to me. And in this respect, I feel that this approach to the fathomless mystery is far better than the Vedanta or the Hinayana Buddhist approach, which consists of this contemplation, which is intense concentration, therefore almost universal exclusion of everything. I mean, the whole point of the later Mahayana doctrine is that it includes things. I mean, it permits you to live in the world, but perceiving the absolute, perceiving nirvana, not outside the world, as the Arhat does in the Hinayana tradition, but perceiving it within it and realizing it in acts of work and love. I mean, I don't know any higher ideal of life than that. I mean, it seems to touch on every level, on the ethical, the philosophic, the artistic.
What part has the supernatural in your life?
I don't exactly know what people mean by the supernatural. I mean, in practice, I would say that what people call the natural in our Western tradition is in fact our projection of concepts upon the world. I would say this is the natural is our tendency to project our notions and concepts upon the outer world. I mean, to see the outer world not as the immediate datum of experience, but as an embodied label, as the illustration of some generalization already pre-existing in our skulls. This is what we call the natural world. The supernatural world, as far as I'm concerned, is in effect the genuinely natural world, which is the world of immediate experience without all these concepts imposed upon it. I mean, anyone who has ever had the experience of seeing the world without labels and concepts immediately has the impression of its being supernatural. And I mean, in a curious paradoxical way, nature as it is in itself, in as much as we can ever know it in itself, is supernatural. The all too natural is this all too human world of concepts which we impose upon nature. And this, as far as I'm concerned, is the difference between the natural and the supernatural. The natural is what is our picture of the world with its names and its labels imposed upon it, the utilitarian and scientific and generally day-to-day picture, and the supernatural is the world as it comes to us in its profoundest mystery. I mean, one is sometimes suddenly aware of this bottomless mystery of existence. I mean, suddenly you're hit by this thing. If you choose to call this the supernatural, I mean, I don't know what other sense it has. I mean, I don't believe in mysterious beings going around and arranging things, but I do believe in the profound, unfathomable mystery of life, which I think has a sort of divine quality about it. I think there is a mysterious being, but whether he goes around arranging things is another question. I just don't know. I mean, I think one can be complete agnostic and a complete mystic at the same time. I don't see any incompatibility with mysticism and the most skeptical scientific approach. I mean, there's no incompatibility, just as there's no incompatibility between being a biochemist and having a taste for music. I'm entirely on the side of the mystery. I mean, any attempt to explain away the mystery is ridiculous. This fundamental everyday mystery of our existence is something which we mustn't try to avoid through intellectual explanation. We have to have intellectual explanations, but we have to be perfectly clear that they're not completely satisfying, that we must never take these words too seriously. Words are very important, but if we take them too seriously, we destroy everything. But if we can somehow learn to make the best of both worlds, the worlds of conceptual explanation and the worlds of immediate experience, the world of the mystery as it's actually given, then we have a full and complete life. Otherwise we have either the life of the sort of savage without any intellectual side at all, or else the so-called life of reason, which is wholly unsatisfactory. We have to have both. We must make the best of both worlds. And the Greeks did pretty well up to a point, but I mean the Greeks had their appalling limitations. I mean their whole view of women was utterly unsatisfactory. They had no view of an adequate kind of marriage, no view of a permanent love relationship between the sexes. I mean, in that way they were frightfully limited. But in other ways I think they did handle the problem of the irrational very well. I don't know enough about older civilizations to know which did it well. I mean, I think many of them obviously did it pretty well. I mean, I suppose the Chinese did it pretty well. But though I'm quite sure that we could improve upon it, I don't think we do it very well. We have such bad symbols. I mean, we really no great symbols now. I mean, all that we have are these ridiculous nationalist symbols like flags and swastikas and whatnot. But no sort of great cosmic symbols. I mean, when you think of the staggering symbols that the Indians produced, I mean, the dancing Shiva, for example, we've never produced anything as comprehensive as this. The dancing Shiva, those little bronze statues, it is the Shiva with 4 arms dancing with 1 foot raised. And, well, I mean, I go into the details, they're really quite extraordinary. It's the figure stands within a great circle, a sort of halo, which has flames going out, I mean, the symbols of flames. And this is the circle of mass, energy, space, time. I mean, this is the material world. This is the great world of the all-embracing material world with its flames, which are energy. Within this, Shiva dances. He's called Nataraja, the Lord of the dance. And he dances, he's everywhere in the universe. I mean, this is his dance. The manifestation of the world is called his lila, his play. It's, I mean, he sends his rain upon the just and the unjust, and he's beyond good and evil, of course. It's all an immense manifestation of play. He has this long hair, which is the hair of the yogin, contemplative, and it streams out to the limits of the universe, you see. Therefore, this sort of yogic knowledge of this contemplation includes everything. He has 4 arms. In the upper right arm, he holds a little drum, which is the drum which summons things into creation. You beat upon this drum, things come into existence. In his left arm, he holds a fire, which is what destroys everything. He both creates and destroys. His lower right hand is held up in this attitude, which means be not afraid, in spite of everything, it is all right. The other hand points down at his feet, and 1 foot is planted squarely on the back of a repulsive and dwarf, this infinitely powerful dwarf called Muyalaka, I think his name is,